Have you ever been on a shoot and thought to yourself, man, if only this camera could pull focus for me? That was literally me a few months ago when I was on a commercial job shooting on the Blackmagic FX6 6K. And after many years of trying everything from Canon to Blackmagic to Panasonic, I finally landed back at Sony on the Sony FX6. And today I want to share with you why I think it's a great camera going into the year 2026. My first real cinema camera I ever fell in love with was the Blackmagic Ursa Mini Pro. It had the most beautiful color science, and the size for handheld shooting made it a dream to operate. But here's the thing, there was no autofocus. And when directing and operating at the same time with a small crew, you don't have the luxury of a focus puller on set with you. So I'd be trying to operate the camera, direct the client, pull focus, and make sure everything was dialed in all at the same time. And as much to this day, I still love the Blackmagic color science. It just wasn't the right camera for our needs at Particle Creative. So eventually, after trying a fewer smaller Blackmagic cameras, I purchased an FX3 thinking I'd found the sweet spot, a smaller body, full frame, great autofocus, and great color science. But because of how small it was, I started to rig it up and make it heavier for handheld work to give it a longer battery life. So I rigged it up with the Camera Foundry Cineback kit, a gold mount battery, my external monitor, which was awesome until one day I realized I've basically built a Sony FX6 at this point. I think one of the challenges for me every time I've tried to ever rig out these smaller mirrorless cameras is that I don't think they were ever really designed with that intentionality. Again, there's all these different parts and components out there that allow you to actually build this up, but maybe it's just me. Every time I've operated those cameras, I just always felt like they were kind of awkward to operate because you have this small body with all these larger components around it to rig it up, and it just never felt great in my hands. So that's when I finally decided to make the jump, enter the Sony FX6. The Sony FX6 hits this sweet spot for people running as solo filmmakers and small crews, and yet it can still hang with the big boy productions. Here's what makes it the perfect camera for me: autofocus. It's reliable enough to actually trust on set, and its ability to track moving objects has saved me so many times. When I was using the Pixis running manual focus, and there were a number of takes that weren't usable because the focus was just so far out, and I knew in my head that the FX6 would just nail the autofocus. So especially for quick moving shots where you know you need to track a fast moving object, this has come in handy for me so many times. Built-in ND filters. This was one of the things I always hated the most about cameras like the Sony FX3, the Blackmagic Pixis, or any other cameras that don't have built-in ND filters, is you'd always be dealing with screwing filters on and off all the time. Which again, when you're running a tight production with smaller crews, having to run to where your gear is, get the filters, and screw them on, screw them off, it doesn't sound like a lot of time, but there'd be times actually where I'd get outside with the client and I'd realize, oh man, I don't have my ND filters. I'd have to run back to where our gear is, get the filters, come back out, and that back and forth can just really slow the whole day down. The dedicated buttons is something I really love. You hit the S and Q button to get into slow motion. I've set up a quick switch on the white balance that I've set up for different settings for 3200, 5000, and 5600 Kelvin. One of my other favorite features is the audio auto limiter. This is one of the things I love so much about the FX6, which the FX3 also has as well. Auto mode, which allows you to set up a limiter to auto monitor audio levels so you can focus on the interview you're doing or just capturing B-roll, which again for a solo operator like me is incredibly useful because there's a lot of times where I'm out doing interviews sometimes by myself, and so I've found this helpful because I can actually focus on just interviewing the person and I'm not caught up in looking at the levels all the time. I think the color on Sony cameras has gotten so much better over the years. I can think back to when I had the A7S camera, the earlier models. The color, honestly, it wasn't that great. It was 8-bit. The Sony cameras we're seeing today, the colors in my opinion are much stronger than they've ever been, and personally I've been using the Phantom LUTs for the last couple of years, and I'm getting color that I'm honestly happy with when I compare it to what I loved so much about the Blackmagic colors. Overall, the absolute most underrated part for me, thinking back to when I did the FX3 Cineback build, is the form factor of the Sony FX6. Unlike the FX3, it's way less rigging and cable mess to be dealing with because the box style body is set up in such a way that it just works better to be built out. And the one con I would say that everyone talks about is the external audio handle, that if you want full-size XLRs, it's really the only way that you can get it on this camera is attaching that top handle. For me, it's something that initially I didn't like, but as time's gone on, I've just left the handle on there and it's become a part of my actual build that I put my monitor on top. So you always hear people say on here, gear doesn't matter. And yes, I agree, there's a lot of truth to that. And a lot of cameras in the last 5 to 10 years can absolutely produce incredible images. But what I think really it comes down to is finding the right piece of gear that works for your specific workflow, not someone else's. For me, the FX6 means fewer retakes, less setup time, and it frees me up as an operator to have more headspace for creativity so I can ultimately focus on storytelling, which is what the viewers and your clients care about anyway. So I know the Sony FX6 isn't the newest, most flashiest camera out there, but for small crews or people like me who are operating and directing at the same time and you have a lot you're managing on a production day, it's just streamlined the whole process for me to make the shooting process and the production day run a lot smoother. And I still think as I look over the whole camera market and the landscape that's out there today, I still think it is one of the most unbeatable cameras on the market today, again, for my specific needs. And so as I head into 2026, the Sony FX6 is definitely the camera that I'll be reaching for on every single project.